does anybody have any questions? Any kind of question about practice or life in the temple? How do you use life?
Hello, Sunim. I would like to ask you a question about Dharma Name and taking precepts.
About, what's the first word?
Dharma Name. Dharma Name.
I don't hear so well. What?
Dharma, Buddhist name? Dharma. Oh, sorry, it's my pronunciation.
Oh, the Dharma name,
Dharma name
and taking precepts.
And taking precepts. How does this influence the practice? Thank you.
Take the precepts and then find out. Then afterwards you can tell all of us.
May I do it now, Sunim? Thank you.
You're married. Did anything change with your boyfriend after you got married? There's a purpose why we do these things in front of other people. You know, it kind of makes our, we've made a direction clear to others, and sometimes that strengthens our direction when we do that. So you can do things numerous ways, but when we're kind of saying, oh, this is my direction in front of others, also then people want to support you more because you've kind of acknowledged, oh, yeah, let's do this. So it's very helpful that way.
Thank you.
Would you guys like to just go sit some more until dinner time? I don't have to listen to anybody except my own crap.
Oh, what do we do with the voice of our own crap that plays on repeat, that habit energy, you know? If we have bad karma big as a mountain, there's a lot of energy that pushes me forward, that keeps coming up. So what do we do with that voice?
That's a good question. Yeah. We make a thinking habit during our life, and that can make problems. Okay, because often we're doing something, but a lot of our mental energy is having some other conversation. Now, you can tell, probably everybody's had this experience, especially when you get to know the chant by heart, you can be chanting and thinking other things as well. And when you do that, your senses aren't 100% present. And you're not picking up on what's going on very effectively. In fact, it can be extreme. You know, let's say you get very angry at someone at home, at work, and you get in your car and you're having this fight with them in your head, and you're driving. You may not notice a little kid bouncing a ball just ahead. If you're paying attention 100%, you'll notice it, and without thinking about it, you'll catch it if the ball goes in the street. You'll pick up on it. Our senses, including our mind, are like global, and they're clear and awake 100% of the time. But we cover it, you know, because we involve our energy into things that aren't beneficial. You know, look at the cats out here. Occasionally they're caught by surprise, but very rarely. And sometimes even when they're laying down and they have their eyes closed, we can't do this with our ears, but they, you know, a bird sound goes over there, you know, some other sound here. They hear footsteps, they'll open their eyes. If they recognize you, often unless you step right up to them, they'll just lay there. But if they're a little uncomfortable, or if they don't know you, they'll get up. Very, very perceptive. They're 100% now. But we're not. We spend a whole lot of time having opinions about things and having some dialogue going on. And so we're not present. One thing, I played sports when I was young, and I liked to watch some sports before. And, sports people, if they have too much thinking, they're not very good. If they've just trained and they've worked together, say in a team, it just naturally comes out if they're really present. There was a great picture of this guy, Zadine. He was, I think, the captain of the French football team when they won the World Cup some decades ago. And there's this amazing picture. Somebody's kicking the ball. Let's say the goal is here. They kick the ball in the air from the corner. And the picture is his foot up in the air hitting the ball. And how does he time it so it goes right, the ball's moving this way, and he redirects it right into the corner of the upper corner of the goal. You can't do that with thinking, That's when your body, and it comes from practice, from do, connects. That's an amazing process of the brain. If you had to put it out on a computer or something, they'd have to, how fast is this ball coming? What is its trajectory? What's the wind? If he has his foot at what angle and hits it at what moment, will it go in the corner? Humans can do that without any of those calculations at all. It's just training. There was a guy, a professor, who would come to the Zen Center in the 1970s. And late in the 1970s, two of Seung San's students became the first students to get Inca. And one of them was the student of this professor at university. And Seung San was very impressed that the professor would come, go to interviews, Kongan interviews, and bow to his former student. In Korea, I don't know now, but it used to be professor was considered a lot of status. It was very respected. And this guy would bow to his own student in that situation. I remember Seung San saying, wow, that's great. He'll put it down to learn from his student. One day, the guy didn't come for about 6 months. And then one night, the professor shows up again at practice. And I see Sansanim chat with him a little bit, and he leaves. And one of the students says, oh, Sansanim, why didn't Professor Jae come for 6 months? And then Sansanim said, he had a new girlfriend. Then why come now? 6 months, then a little boring, so again come to the Zen Center. Then this woman who was standing there, they hadn't talked about, how do you know? I saw his face. You pick up so much in interviews. If I ask somebody a question, their eyes go up. They're thinking. They're checking up here. Is the answer somewhere up here? It may be, hitting the floor, but right away, the eyes go up. In so many interactions, if we're aware, just present, we pick up stuff. Everybody does, just like the cats do. But we're not aware because we're so involved in some mental stuff. So what do you do about that? Okay, when you're sitting, what's your practice? Well, sitting practice has 3 parts. Body, and there's various positions, and you can train yourself, for example. I couldn't sit like this the first couple of years I came to the Zen Center. I was on 3 cushions like this and filled with pain. So mostly I was just dealing with pain. And but you can learn to loosen up your body, or some people have injuries, and so they have to adjust for that, sitting or using a chair, because we allow a chair. And so first is body, and we try and get into some balanced position. So you don't sit with one leg like this. Women sit like that often, I notice. Even today at tea break, one of the ladies sat down and, and it's not uncomfortable. It's probably comfortable, but not for a long period of time. Also, it doesn't, your hips become unbalanced. So that's why we sit in a position where the hips are kind of level. And this has an amazing stability. Basically your legs and your butt are on the ground. It's very stable. And we may not experience this, but there's a kind of energy between us and the ground. And there is when we walk. That's why earthquakes freak people out, because this earth and walking, sitting, lying down, that we completely bodily trust suddenly is moving. We can't trust it. And it hits you really deeply. I was in a few earthquakes, small ones in LA and a big one in San Francisco once. And I remember my parents were visiting and we were on top of a hill in San Francisco and I could feel the earthquake and I was thinking, oh, this is interesting. My parents, they're East Coast, no earthquakes. They can experience an earthquake. And then it just kept going. And the cars were going like this and a light fell down. Well, this is a little more than usual. And it turned out it was a big earthquake. And, but that's how rooted our body is in the ground. But we're not very aware anymore. On some island during the tsunami in 2003, the elephants left the lowland before the tsunami hit. People believe, scientists say, they felt it. At one time, centuries ago, the Chinese were trying to develop a earthquake warning system by watching horses. So animals, they're still tuned in. But we got so up in our heads that we've become really stupid. Yeah. So when you're sitting, okay, body, you try and get that stable. Usually the first week or two of retreat, if you don't sit a lot, it's a struggle, and you can feel where, you're kind of stuck. And so if you just keep working with it, breathing, kind of breathe into that area, breathe out of that area, learn to do some stretching or some yoga, regularly, so you don't just, I'll do yoga today, maybe I'll feel better this afternoon. It doesn't happen that quickly. Then you can become more stable in the body. Then maybe second or third week, your mind starts attacking you, because we always have these habits. So the second part of sitting is awareness of our breath. And there's a variety of ways you can do it. In Theravadan Buddhism, in the Pali Sutras, Buddha talks a lot about using awareness of breath as meditation. But it's a little complicated the way he talks about it there. With Zen, it's much simpler. Just be aware of breathing in and breathing out. That's all. Be aware. Breathing in, be aware of breathing out, not just mentally, physically. And then, after a few moments, some awareness of it, make your exhale a little longer each time. And over time, that helps both your body and your mind relax. Koreans actually, they talk about lower belly breathing, 2 centimeters below your navel is called the tanjan, energy garden. Chinese say dantian, same thing. And that's our body's energy center. But when we're born, it moves up here. And then it moves up here. And then many problems appear. I might have said this in the opening talk, I'm not sure. But something that's energy is high is easy to knock over and difficult to come back up. But if its energy is low, even if it's knocked over, physically, emotionally, mentally, it's not so hard to come back up. So you can use your breath to try and relax your thinking and let your body energy come down. But just like it took us 20, 30, 40 years to make our body, our emotional, our thinking habits it doesn't disappear in 10 minutes. That's why we have retreats and daily practice. Then we can slowly alter those habits. Or even if we still have some of the habits, they don't have so much control over us. There was a commercial decades ago for Samsung luggage, and they put this luggage in a gorilla enclosure, and this gorilla was playing with it, and he's throwing it and banging it. He's having a great time, and they do it to show, how strong Samsung luggage is. But I always think of practice when I see that, because it's like, first, our habits throw us all over the place. Sometimes we like them, but they're not necessarily beneficial. But when we practice, we can actually change habits, or even if they don't change or disappear, they become weaker. So it starts out as this whole conversation in your head, and it affects your body and everything. And later, it can be just like, birds. Maybe for a while, flock of birds in your head, or a little chirp up in the sky. And it's like, oh yeah, human beings do that. They make that kind of thinking. So the breath awareness of breath will bring you back into the present moment. Then next is, and relax your body, and over time, relax your body and mind. And there's some great talks we can give about that I've heard from Seung Sunim. And then mind, the thinking mind. What do we do with that? Well, if you just have a big question like a baby does, when it sees its hand and it doesn't know it's its hand, then no problem. There's no thinking there. It's just like, what? I was at a coffee shop, and there were two little kids there, a little girl and a little boy, and they looked about the same size, very similar faces. So I think they were twins. And the little girl looked at me, just total, and then went over and grabbed her father's leg, which I always notice these little kids, because they're Korean and they don't see live Western faces very often. Almost always they'll go like to one of their parents. And then if you wait, they get curious again and they come over and stuff. But she just had this like, if you have that mind, you don't need a mantra or anything. That mind, if you put words to it, is, what is this? What am I? But we have to put words to it. But our original nature doesn't. We did it when we were little kids a lot. Like most of the time, either expressing our opinion, crying, happy, angry, or whatever it was, or we had this, what? Curiosity mind. So if you have that and can keep it a long time, you don't need wadu. The Koreans talk about wadu, it's like a question, because the question's supposed to give you that mind, which Seung Sunim called don't know, okay? But true don't know has no words. It's just like that little kid, So, but since we have lots of thinking, often there's a variety of things we can do with that thinking energy. Originally, Seung Sunim told everybody when they first started practicing, when you breathe in, say to yourself, clear mind, clear mind, clear mind. When you breathe out one time long, don't know. Clear mind, clear mind, clear mind, don't know. I found the first day or so I practiced that, it was like, wow, it's sort of a little relief from all my thinking. And then it got like eventually really boring, and it's like, clear mind, don't know. It's just like, like people would say, oh, I just feel like a robot. But for me then, at one point, he told me to do a mantra. And the mantra can become the same way. But the point is, since you're thinking anyway, you get some phrase to repeat, which has no opinion at all. It's just a phrase. That's why in one of the stories in Dropping Ashes, Seung Sunim says, you could say Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola if your reason for practicing is clear, your direction, you believe it will help you, and you try all the time, it would have the same effect as a mantra. But we repeat this mantra, and we can see then, we can perceive inside when we're not doing it anymore, because we're thinking about lunch, or my roommate who I don't like, or whatever, or something about the past, or thoughts about the future, or whatever. Just any thinking that doesn't fit the situation. Then you notice that thinking, you take that energy, put it back into mantra and awareness of the breath. So that's how you start to cut into that voice habit, that thinking habit. Chanting the same way. You're chanting Mahabanyap. The voices in here aren't so good. Well, that guy's voice is pretty good. Why doesn't everybody follow? Why don't they follow me? Or whatever kind of crap goes on. Everybody has their own brand of stuff. You notice that, you take the energy that habitually you put over there and you try to put it back into the sound. Make the sound. And then hear other people's voices. That's called clear mind. So that's how we train. With bowing, when I first came to the Zen Center, the Seung didn't announce last bow. They just would stop, and everybody seemed to be pretty good at the same count. But I noticed, I would try and count every bow. And I noticed in the first 6 months, twice, I got to 108 when everybody else did. And I was just amazed at myself. I was like 26 years old, and I can't count to 108 at 5 a.m. It was great. I did an experiment with some people at Harvard about that, and they were just amazed. They couldn't count to 10 without getting lost, like over and over again, without getting lost. A few people really could stick with it for short periods of time. So I switched, and I started to move beads. And at the time I had a set of 27 with a big bead. So 27 times 4 is 108. So I only had to count to 4 every time I passed the big bead. And sometimes you'd be like 2, 3 or 2. It was just amazing. It was amazing to see, how much can you just pay attention and do it. So then I got 128, and so there's only one big bead, so I don't even have to count them. When you get there, you're done. But here, we make it easy, and the Seung announces, last bow. So what I switched to here, before when I used to come to bowing, I didn't use the beads. I just do mantra the whole time. Mantra going down, mantra coming up. Try to breathe out going down, breathe in coming up, although couldn't always match it. And the Seung will tell you when it's the last one. In fact, it's a bummer to count, 27, only a quarter of the way. 36, it's a third, it's only a third. Like that, your brain grabs on these things. Better just do mantra, don't think of anything, and the Seung will say, last bow. And sometimes you'll be, already? So that's how we deal with that voice. And one benefit of a mantra is you can do that when you're working. And I think that's why Seung Sahn, I don't know why, but he gave me the mantra at the end of the Heart Sutra, told me to do it 3,000 times a day. And I found that kind of hard during daily life. I had to make an effort on free time. But interesting thing happened once. I'd been doing that for about a year, really trying to do it a lot. In fact, I wore beads. I slept in the meditation room, I think, the first 2 years I lived in the Zen Center. I had a room, but the meditation room had a carpet, and I liked sleeping there in a sleeping bag. A few people did. And one reason I started wearing beads was the bowing, but the other thing was I'd see it in the morning and think right away, mantra. Or I do mantra before I fell asleep, and so it reminded me to do mantra when I'd see it. One day I was at work, and we had gotten this job painting a bunch of houses for some guy. We were, it's like subcontractors, it's called. And we used to eat with their team of carpenters. And this guy who was the boss, this very interesting guy. He actually had a PhD in economics. He had taught at Harvard, but he had quit to build houses, which I think had been his father's business. And he also was a Jewish guy originally from Russia. So in the 1970s and 80s, he was trying to get Russia to let the Jews leave. So that gave him free time to work on those things. I saw he had a desk in the basement of the house, one of the houses. It was just concrete. And so we'd eat together, and I was leaning up against the wall, kind of resting, and this guy comes up to me, and he had a habit, though, of sometimes trying to make you feel bad. I don't know why. But he starts talking to me, and I'm just looking up at him, and I feel this bad feeling coming up. And probably from meditation, I was aware of feeling. Didn't think anything. I was just aware of the feeling. And then the mantra started by itself. And the feeling disappeared. And I was so shocked at what was happening inside, I just smiled at him. And he was shocked by my smile. I don't know if he thought about it at all, but he just stopped talking, walked away, never did that again to me. That's called karma disappearing. So the thing about using a mantra and making a habit with it is sometimes it will pop up and help you. If you're trying to, use it to cut through the thinking habits. So that's how you deal with your thinking habits. Or washing dishes. Washing dishes is such a great meditation. In some ways, it's easier than sitting because you're just doing this thing. And in the kitchen here, it's a team, One person's doing the soapy part, one person's doing the rinsing part, somebody else is, taking them out and maybe drying them. So you got this really simple job wherever you are there. Let the kitchen master put away the food. That's a little more complicated. But that's their level of clarity, So you're just doing this, and then when you're thinking some kind of ridiculous thing, treat it like a martial art meditation. Put your feet shoulder width apart, drop your butt towards the ground a little bit, bend your knees so you've got your center, and then wash. And you can see the water. You don't even have to tell yourself, oh, see the water, look at the light off of the dish. Oh, I can feel it's warm. Just do it. Get back into your body a little bit and be alive. We've gotten so up into our heads. Now, traditionally, the real problem people had was, I think, desire centuries ago, because life was closer to survival than to just satisfaction. But most of us come from situations where satisfaction was our main motivation. Did anybody here grow up with not enough food? Somebody over there did. That's why she's kitchen master. Wants to feed everybody. Thank you very much. So most of us are freezing to death. Maybe, I don't know. The Russians come here and it's like in another month, they're like, oh my God, and the Malaysia people come here in June and they wear scarves and, Hong Kong and Bopwa Sunim, who's, like thinner than thin, they're wearing scarf and Bopwan Sunim is wearing T-shirts in the winter. One time we have this monk, Gumgang Sunim, who lives in Siberia in a cabin, and he had come back to do a winter retreat. And so it's snowing, it's the middle of winter, and we're walking down from the Buddha hall after chanting, and I said to him, what do you miss about Siberia, where it's 40 below zero, during the winter? He said, winter. This isn't winter. We had somebody from Singapore here when we had to shovel the snow, and I sort of went up to him during the work period, and I said, just like being home in Singapore, isn't it? He never shoveled snow in his life, you know. He saw snow in movies, you know. So that's one cool thing about living with people from all these different places. You know, if your body grows there, it's probably used to that stuff, you know. And turn daily life into practice. Even a complicated life you can turn into practice by learning to pay attention, put down opinions, and just do what you're supposed to be doing. You know? So that's how you deal with these voices. And don't make them stronger, you know. Now, naturally, when we practice, we say Dharma strong, karma strong. But if you keep going, that my experience is this karmic opinions might not appear as often, but when they appear, they're kind of concentrated and strong. But if we keep practicing, we recognize it. And then we can put it down. And one day, boom, Dharma wins. So that's why it's important. Here we get like a booster shot, 8 hours a day sitting and chanting, and we're with a group of people all doing the same thing. But it's very important to turn that into a daily practice. And we have that here, and we have enough of a work period, you can have an experience of how do I make my work period practice. I remember finding that the hardest thing for me sometimes, decades ago, was free time. So I used to do lots of bowing, or sometimes chanting in the Sanchinggak, not here, but in another temple. You know, every day I would chant for an hour in the it wasn't a Sanchinggak, but it was a small hall like that. And I found that was better than resting. If you haven't kept this schedule much, then the first week or two, maybe resting on breaks is helpful. But later, you know, stretch yourself a little bit by adding extra practice, or go hiking. You know, meditation monks and nuns, they do yoga and they hike a lot. So your body's energy is like, you're active. That's very helpful. Okay?
I have a question. How to overcome angriness, even though you understand that it comes out of fear and sadness?
Anger.
Yeah.
Okay. One time I asked Seung, where does anger come from? And he said, from checking. Okay, we're checking. The situation or something somebody doesn't say, it says, is different than my opinion. Or like you said, maybe your experience, anger is coming from sadness or fear. So sadness is holding something from the past. Fear is worried about the future. Okay? So maybe something happened that is very sad for you and you got angry. Maybe you were right. I don't know, you know. But it keeps coming up now. It's not necessarily connected to anything that's happening here. It's some mental karma that I have. Fear usually is, well, what's going to happen? You may not think of it that way. It's feelings actually are before thoughts. Although, if you really penetrate what's going on in your mind, you'll see there's a thought at the bottom. Usually that thought is I. Somehow, it's I. You know, the difference between cats and us is they don't think about I. They're just attached to their body. They're very simple. We attach to our body, and on top of that, we make an I that has all kinds of opposites to it. So it's more complicated. So what can you do about that? First, understand there's some kind of checking going on. I'm checking my feeling. I'm holding something, or I'm concerned about the future, so I'm not in the present moment. So I asked Seung, where does anger come from? He said, checking. I said, where does checking come from? He said, how did he say this? Not believe in yourself. Not believe in your true self. That means not present right now. Keeping the correct situation, correct function, correct relationship. Then I said, where does not believing in yourself come from? And he said, just do it. And I realized these emotions, not all of them, but many emotions like this thing, or especially anger, comes from me not keeping my correct situation right now. If we're holding something about the past, if we're thinking about the future, cut through that by paying attention right now. If it persists, that's the way you use meditation. If it's really strong and needs to be unpacked, talk to a counselor or a psychologist, really, because then you can start to tease out, where is this sadness coming from? It's like opening up the luggage of my sadness. Where is it? What is it? You can recognize that yourself if your question is big and your mind's penetrating, because it's from things that happened to you, okay? But often we don't have a strong enough faith in practice. We do have faith in it, but we can't penetrate it ourselves. Then talking it out with someone who's trained is helpful. So one of the biggest things happening in Buddhism in the West is psychology, and even science, even physics and Buddhism blending and interacting. And it's very fruitful. It's really happening a lot in America, and it's beginning to happen here in Korea. So they can complement each other, because how did psychology appear? It appeared because of the kinds of mental suffering modern people have. And Buddhism appeared because of the kind of suffering everybody has, anytime, any culture. So psychology is not deep enough, but it can help us. It's a good complement in teasing out, what is that about? Or just keep the question yourself. You know, I've done retreats where, as a layperson, I was in a very difficult personal situation, and I couldn't have practiced on my own. I needed to be in a group with people, and then I was able to keep the schedule. And we didn't talk, but I had a really bad situation. And then one day, after about 2 months, something changed. And I saw through what was going on, and that changed my life. I understood something about myself and the situation I had been in. So you can penetrate through those things on your own. But what can you do right now? Understand that things like that are, like anger, you said, is really coming from sadness or fear. I think that's true with most people. Although maybe not aware of it. You're aware of it, that's great. Well, that time, what is your correct situation? Well, if you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes. And instead of putting the body and mental energy into anger, mantra. That's what you're doing. You're drawing energy that habitually I put in to these opposite thinking, emotions, and thinking. You're drawing it away from that. And then someday, if it appears, it'll be really clear. So I'd suggest you do a mantra practice. And because what it means, not believing yourself, is not able to keep my correct situation. If I have lots of thinking, my correct situation is mind practice. Because this thinking can just go on forever. You start to cut through it and then boom. But the thing is, you can pierce through all of this if you put enough faith in practice and try. Yeah. So if you find yourself getting angry, that's a good sign. Breathing, mantra, what am I doing right now? Do it. Then you may recognize what you're sad about, what you're afraid about, and then you can check it. Does it fit the situation? You'll get wisdom. It's called getting wisdom. You look doubtful. Another thing you can do is 1,000 bows a day. That burns up anger. You know, one time there was this one monk and he was really upset about something, and Sahn told him, "You must do 500 bows every day." And the monk said, "No." And then Sahn said, "You must do 200 bows every day." And the monk said, "No." And then Sahn said, "Then get a stick, go out in the forest and hit a tree." Then the monk said, "Okay, I'll do that." The monk told me about it. He says, "I was very happy that Sahn gave me a few options." Okay, so when you get angry, go out and take a stick and hit a tree. Call it whatever you want. Give it any name you want, you know. House master. Whatever. You know. Make use of and your situation. Okay? Yeah. And breathe. Any other questions?
Sunim, because just now you mentioned about the anger, and then you mentioned about like using the mantra. I just wonder, like, because I also come across there's a word like spiritual bypass. So I just wonder, is it kind of spiritual bypass, or like how to do it correctly? Then we are not spiritual bypass.
Why do you practice? Only that? So, very important. Another thing about anger, I heard Seung say once, big anger, big question, big enlightenment. So have a big question. What is this anger about? What is this? Then it's not that anger is bad or good. There's 4 kinds of anger. We talk about anger, 4 kinds of anger. The first is attached anger. We can't get what we want, we get angry, or we get something we don't want, we get angry. That's same as an animal, okay? But we are also animals, you know. So that's a attached anger. Second kind is reflected anger. You're not angry, but somebody starts screaming at you and then you get angry back. This happens in driving all the time. That's reflected anger. Originally, the person's not angry, but somebody does something, shows you anger, then you get angry back. Those are both kind of low class, okay? That means no center and just attached, to my opinion. Third kind is called perceived anger. You can perceive inside you're getting angry. You can recognize it, but before it comes out in speech or actions, you put it down. If you put it down, if you really let it go, then no problem. But if you push it down, then one day explode. So, or you get sick. Now, doesn't Korean say hwabyung? Hwabyung. Yeah, it means fire sickness. It comes from holding anger inside. You get sick. Heart attack, ulcers, cancer, things like that. So perceived anger is a little high class, but it has a problem. You can make yourself sick if you can't let it go 100%, Or, like in America, maybe some places else, one day you blow up and you go to work and you kill a bunch of people. You know, that happens a lot in America. Or the kids in schools. I don't know what causes that. That's maybe a different thing. Sometimes it's just want to be famous. But that's perceived anger. You see it, you're aware of you're starting to get angry inside, but you put it down. Then there's something else. So inside you're angry, outside not angry. Then there's big love anger. That means outside angry, but inside not angry. That is love when it's necessary. The only person I've ever seen do that often is Seung. I think I've been able to do it a couple times. You know, somebody called me up and they're screaming on the phone about another monk. And I wasn't angry at all. And I thought, okay, here we go. And I just screamed back at the person and they calmed down. And then I understand this person, so I have to give him a little compliment, you know. So I said, you know, you're not wrong, but you're like a person who takes a baseball bat and beats people. You know, but if you keep practicing, one day you'll be like a surgeon and you'll cut off people's head and they won't even know it until their head hits the ground. That's kind of a compliment, you know. So, but first part was just reflect completely. You can do that if you're not angry inside. But if you're also angry inside, it won't work, okay? That's like a good mother's mind. So maybe the kid wants to touch the flame, then the mom says, don't touch that, it's hot. You know, she's working, the kid does it again. No, it's hot. Mommy doesn't want you to hurt yourself. He does it again. No, you'll get pain. That's very hot, go over there. Then the kid does it again. The mom's like, no! And the kid falls down crying, and then she picks him, she's not angry, she picks him up, but that strong energy. For new people, I tell this story. I was with Seung Sunim once, and some student called him on the phone. And he's like, oh, hello, how are you? And then, you know, the other person's talking. He says, oh, problem? What kind of problem? No. That kind of thinking's no good. No. That only make more problem. Put it down. No. Put that mind down, then no problem. I said, put it down. He turned bright red. He had one of these low-cut Korean T-shirts on, you know, so his chest was red, his neck, his head, you know, all red, screamed in the phone. I said, put it down. Slammed the phone down, turned to me, perfect normal color, and said, they strong holding something, so I strong energy into. Inside, not angry at all. Just that energy necessary. That's very high class. So, yeah, anger. Sometimes anger is life-saving. You just have to use it correctly. Otherwise, big problem. You came to retreat, so some part inside trusts practice, has some faith that maybe if I do this, it will really be helpful. And maybe it will lead to something very valuable about human life and how to live and who I am, etc. So now it's just a matter of doing it. That's all. And it's so great to have other people doing it together. That's why Wan Bo Sunim said, even your different situations socially, and can be very different, where normally you wouldn't connect, but you can connect when the other people are practicing, because everybody has desire, anger, and ignorance that leads to suffering. And everybody wants to get out of suffering. And that's completely independent of gender, culture, age, profession, everything. It's human situation and condition. And the medicine for that, Buddha's teaching is medicine. And it's not some made-up idea that maybe you can have faith in or not. It's a process we can discover ourselves because it is our nature. It's pointing back to our original nature. And Buddha really trusted that, had faith in the ability of we as individuals. It's a really true freedom, and not dependent on other things. So thank you so much for being willing to be here. And people who came from outside the temple, doesn't matter once you're here where we come from. Originally, all the Sunims come from outside the temple too. But, everybody made an effort to get here. So let's just continue to use the situation well. And once in a while, maybe some questions and answers help us clarify and sort of sharpen our ability to do it ourselves. So thank you very much, everybody.